Just west of Montrose, on a quiet 3-acre property hidden behind stone walls, is the former home of Rockhaven Sanitarium. Founded by Agnes Richards in 1923 at a time when mental health was widely misunderstood and many women were second-class citizens, it catered exclusively to women and was run by women for nearly 80 years. Rockhaven's tranquil environment, its many gardens, patios, walkways, fountains, shade trees, and lovely housing played a major role in the care and treatment of its residents. Richards' progressive vision of helping these women recover and live productive lives was trailblazing. And just as the idyllic setting was linked to their recovery, so also the concept of Rockhaven was related to its founder's own story. Agnes Richards was born in 1881. She emigrated from Germany to the Midwest where, as soon as she was old enough, got a job at the Hastings, Nebraska Hospital for the Chronic Insane. She spent her life working with mental patients, seeing treatments of all kinds. It was there that she met her husband. They married and moved to Chicago. But tragically, shortly after their son was born, her husband died. A widow and single mother, Agnes put herself through nursing school at Cook County Hospital in Chicago. During World War I, she served with the Red Cross in Ohio, and when the war was over, the doctor whom she served under suggested she work at the Patton State Hospital near San Bernardino, California. From there, she went to LA County Hospital, where she became a registered nurse. Recognizing serious flaws in the treatment of the mentally ill, especially women, Agnes decided it was time to create a different kind of mental care facility. The law made it far too easy for some patients to be locked away for unknown amounts of time and with little provocation, such as a husband who wanted a new wife but not a divorce from the old one. One husband had his wife put away for non-compliance. That is, she didn't agree with his political and religious views. A Rockhaven patient had been institutionalized merely for going through menopause. It was enough for her husband to have her committed simply because she wasn't acting like herself. There was a time a man could merely go to a pharmacist to have a prescription written to have someone put away. In the late 19th century, Nellie Bly drew the world's attention to the mistreatment of the mentally ill. Bly, getting herself committed so she could write an exposé, encountered many women in the madhouse who were fully recovered but had no way of escape. Consequently, perfectly sane women could be driven mad by their confinement. One of the most notorious cases of such abuse was that of Los Angeles resident Christine Collins. In the 1920s, the disappearance of her young son Walter drew national attention. Desperate to recover its sullied reputation, the LA Police Department foisted upon Collins a boy from Chicago claiming to be her son. When she adamantly insisted the boy was not her son, the police had her committed to an asylum. She was released only after the boy admitted he lied, motivated by a free trip to Hollywood to meet Tom Mix. Collins successfully sued the police department for the injustice. But Agnes Richards was convinced there must be a better way to treat those suffering from mental and emotional disorders. Searching for a suitable location, she discovered Verdugo City between the San Gabriel Mountains and Verdugo Hills. She acquired an attractive 2-story rock house on Honolulu Boulevard, surrounded by gorgeous oak trees. The original building was damaged in the 1971 Sylmar earthquake and replaced with the much smaller administration building. Agnes opened her new facility with 6 women, a few chickens, and enough materials to create a garden. It was her intent that these women should be active, enjoy the outdoors, and be given the opportunity to recover and go home. The women were treated with dignified, individualized care in a home-like setting. Inside of a year, she had more than 20 women and needed to expand. She began purchasing the surrounding houses, starting with the Rose Cottage. Originally facing Pleasure Way, Agnes had the building lifted up and turned around to face the Rock House. She was beginning to form a compound where the walkways connected easily to the other buildings and outside gathering areas, like the faux bois furniture amidst the oak trees and next to a pond and fountain. Next to the Rose Cottage is the much smaller Acorn Cottage. Originally built as a one-car garage for the Rose Cottage, it was converted into lodging for a single resident. In contrast to these craftsman-style homes, starting in 1929, Agnes began building Spanish colonial revival buildings. All with dorm-like rooms, enough to accommodate the increased Rockhaven population. Agnes successfully ran Rockhaven until the 1950s, when she decided she would like to spend her final years traveling. Her granddaughter, Patricia Travis, practically grew up at Rockhaven, running errands, taking the ladies shopping, or to appointments. So she was the logical person to take over the reins from Agnes. It is believed Patricia was ahead of her time. She knew that if you kept a person occupied in the here and now, they were less likely to go back in their minds and become confused. She had the gardener lead gardening classes, had an occupational therapist come in and do crafts. There were nutrition classes and music therapy classes. Together, the women brought in Ivan Cole, a landscape designer who created Rockhaven's award-winning grounds. He loved the ladies he worked with and the ladies he worked for. He said working at Rockhaven made life worthwhile. Ivan Cole was instrumental in getting the property purchased by the city of Glendale in 2008. When the property closed, a lot of items were left behind. The Friends of Rockhaven brought out some clothing worn by recent residents, wall hangings, pieces of luggage, even a photo album, a yearbook from 1931, and a German Bible. They are on display in the Acorn Cottage. Details everywhere are part of the charm and beauty of Rockhaven. There were plaques, pots, and statuary all around. This planter was given in honor of a nurse, not who worked here, but was cared for here. Her husband was so touched by the care she received, he donated the planter and plaque, and every year would donate a turkey. While Patricia appreciated the gesture, she laughed that there were 80 residents and he would donate 1 turkey. Here we see the memorial rose garden with plaques to several of the ladies. One plaque is to Patricia's dog Chi-Chi, who was apparently a little terror around here. One of those details Agnes put in here is the gorgeous wrought iron work on the ramp leading up to the Pines. It was created by the Huntington Iron Works of La Cañada. Banner holders are a reminder that large decorative banners were raised celebrating the various seasons and holidays, and they helped residents keep track of the time of year. The many walkways and paths were a part of Rockhaven's therapy as they sloped and undulated with the hillsides, putting the residents more in touch with nature as they would stroll through the property, getting plenty of exercise within the safety of the grounds. Today, tree roots and age have lofted many of them, twisting them out of shape. A Gladys McBean statue has been here since the 1920s. Called Reclining Nude, we believe it represents Rockhaven in so many ways. She is remarkable in her detail and is naked and basking in the sunshine, a beautiful smile on her face. And she's also a little beat up, like Rockhaven is now. To the northeast of the office is the first building Agnes had built in 1929, now known as the Elms. In the corner behind it is the Oaks, the last one she had built in 1939. Testimony that Agnes was able to keep people employed and working during the Great Depression. The Oaks has a similar design to the Elms, but has a cleverly designed craft room downstairs with tables that can fold up and out of the way. The many trees provide shade and a sense of tranquility, while the ivy-covered rock walls buffer the sounds of the city. And landscape designer Ivan Cole added to the beauty by creating gardens of layers and textures. All the residences have names from nature. The house called the Coulter Cottage was built in 1921 with a found rock porch utilizing the many rocks in the area, also known as rock crescenta. They enclosed the porch to create a sleeping porch popular during the health craze of the early 20th century. When Agnes purchased it, she converted every room for sleeping and living. It still has the Murphy beds. Patios and lawns had tables and chairs for people to come and visit with the ladies. Some would play bridge. Sometimes, high school girls volunteered to give the residents manicures or even bat a beach ball back and forth. Families enjoyed visiting in the gorgeous gardens. The Canary Cottage is the oldest building on the property, built in 1920. It even seems to have a root cellar which, considering all of the rocks that are here, must have been a challenge. When the city purchased the property in 2008, it was converted into housing for a caretaker. There has always been a caretaker here, and recently there were two beautiful people who were gardeners at heart and soul. They brought beautiful gardens back to Rockhaven. The residents were never called patients. They were the residents, or, more often, the ladies. When Rockhaven opened, there was an interview process, and the women had to be ambulatory because the idea was they were going to be out and active, aiding their recovery. But in the 1960s, with the invention of thorazine and lithium, treatment was done more at home, and there were fewer people being put away in hospitals. That was when care at Rockhaven started to focus more on dementia, aging issues, and Alzheimer's. Those that couldn't get around the grounds would be moved to convalescent hospitals nearby. But after a while, they had some ladies they couldn't bear to part with, so converted the dorms into the little hospital. It is painted a deep, bright yellow that not everyone finds cheering, But there are lots and lots of windows to bring the outside in for ladies who had difficulty getting out. At Rockhaven, the residents were treated with hydrotherapy, massage therapy, and electroshock therapy. The latter may seem cruel today, but at the time it was a common and accepted practice. A nurse said the doctor would show up, wheel his cart up, she'd help him out, and he would wheel his cart right back off again. It may surprise some to learn that electroshock therapy is still used today, and when used correctly, is said to be very beneficial. While running a sanitarium is by no means a money-making venture, Agnes was a good investor. She was also known for her generosity. A member of many social and philanthropic groups, generous to her mother, brother, and her grandchildren, as well as to the nurses. One Christmas, she hired a limousine and loaded the nurses into the car and took them all downtown to buy them furs. Rockhaven gained a reputation as the Screen Actors' Sanitarium, and remarkable women were cared for here. When you have strong women, you're going to attract strong women. And the building with some of the most colorful stories at Rockhaven is the Pines. Among the film people who stayed here were the likes of Billie Burke, best known for her portrayal of Glinda the Good Witch in The Wizard of Oz.
This is the Wicked Witch of the West. She's worse than the other one was.
Babe Egan, a leader of an all-girl swing band called Babe Egan and her Hollywood Redheads. And Peggy Fears, Broadway star and Ziegfeld Follies girl, an accomplished singer, actor, and producer. Fears was also known for her tumultuous private life. A card at Peggy's bedside read simply, "Love, Teddy." Although she'd been married, Fears had a long-standing love affair with actress Teddy Thurman of the Jack Paar Tonight Show fame. They owned a private botel back on Fire Island. Even after the affair ended, Teddy always loved Peggy and looked after her. Fears' dementia robbed her of the ability to speak. Patricia adored her. She loved dressing her and spending time with her, and would play old recordings of her singing, and Peggy could say, "That's me." Another show business resident was actress Marion Stadler Rose. A former vaudeville performer, she appeared in the movie King of Jazz with the Paul Whiteman Orchestra and a young Bing Crosby in his first film. Marion, who traveled the world with her husband as Stadler and Rose, is featured in a number called Ragamuffin Romeo, where her husband lifts her and flips her around like a rag doll. The choreography was created by Marion herself.
Perhaps you're interested in how a man undresses.
Clark Gable had two connections to Rockhaven. His first wife, Josephine Dillon, was a resident, as well as his fourth wife's sister. Spike Jones had a presence in the Crescenta Valley, and his mom was cared for here. But Rockhaven's most infamous resident was Marilyn Monroe's mother, Gladys Baker Ely. A lovely-looking woman, she was diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic with delusions of persecution. At Rockhaven, she was known for her frequent attempts at dramatic escapes. Once, she tied bed sheets together and escaped out a small window in her closet, even though the large window in her room was only knee-high off the ground. She managed to make her way all the way out to Shadow Hills before being found by a local who had been alerted to her escape. Terrified of repeating her mother's fate, Marilyn Monroe never visited Rockhaven, even though Gladys lived there for almost 16 years. When Marilyn died, all the money was tied up in her estate. Despite this, the women in charge of Rockhaven continued to care for Gladys even while none of the bills were being paid. As Agnes traveled, she would send back statuary, rugs, and pots. When the city of Glendale purchased the property, all these items were tucked away in the garage to protect them from theft and vandalism. Patricia, who earlier in her life had ambitions to own a department store, nonetheless stepped in to help her grandmother, but she put her skills to good use. She took classes at Burbank's Woodbury University in interior design and selected the paint colors and the wallpaper based on their healing effects. The dining hall is serviced by an industrial kitchen and a walk-in refrigerator. Residents were often treated to entertainment.
All alone I sit and dream of someone that I hold as my ideal.
Patricia used any and every opportunity to entertain. There were monthly birthday celebrations and the lavish Mother's Day teas, even Father's Day teas. For Bastille Day, she would get French-cut green beans. For Oktoberfest, a German chocolate cake from the local Swedish bakery. And for Hawaiian Induction Day, she would bring in Polynesian dancers. She also liked to bring in the Del Rubio triplets.
We're triplets, that is true, and now without much ado.
They became good friends throughout the rest of the triplets' lives and performed there many times.
Love to get acquainted with you.
Around 2001, Patricia was getting tired. She'd been running Rockhaven longer than her grandmother had. It was getting harder to keep the early 20th century buildings updated to 21st century ADA standards. Patricia finally sold the property to the Ararat Company, who operated it as best they could for 5 years. However, they were never able to obtain the permits to open the state-of-the-art Alzheimer's unit they were hoping to build, so they closed and decided to sell the property. Naturally, 3.5 acres in Montrose would attract numerous developers. But the community stepped up and convinced the city of Glendale to purchase the property with great plans of moving the library down there, opening up a historic park, expanding the fire station into where the library is now, putting an anchor store where the library was going to go, using the land lease to support the park, but just months after they purchased the property, the economy went into recession. Glendale decided to put Rockhaven into a state of arrested decay. But as you look around, you'll see that the arrest did not lead to conviction, and the property is beginning to fall apart. Recently, the city is seeking ways to bring development in and make money from this park property. But to date, the future of Rockhaven remains unknown.